So I've noticed the closer I get to 40, and luckily I'm not doing it today, but the closer I get to 40, the more and more I start dressing like an NYPD detective that's retired to Florida. I'm not really sure why.
Are we going to start these episodes now with you saying something really quippy and then throwing on a pair of sunglasses?
I should do that. I should do that. It'd be weird if I had the sunglasses on all the time for like through a whole episode, but I think I might have to do that. I think it'd be hard for me to take myself seriously.
Like a lightly tinted set of glasses, not sunglasses, like indoor sunglasses.
No. It would be aviators or nothing.
That's fair. That's actually a good point. They are the superior sunglasses,
I agree,
in my opinion. But that's just because I have a giant head. So I don't think anything else really looks decent on me. If I wear small frame sunglasses, it looks like I'm wearing a children's pair of sunglasses. Unsettling, truthfully. No one needs to see it.
I might, just for scientific curiosity, want to see this at some point, but not right now.
I'll bring some safety glasses that I've got that I wear for work that are like tinted. They're my outside safety sunglasses, and they're really small. It's honestly kind of sad. It's like they look like any early 2000s movie that I haven't seen. The Cool Kid sunglasses.
Oh, like steampunk, really small tinted sunglasses, like from Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
Taylor hasn't seen it.
I have seen it, actually.
What?
That's one I haven't seen.
I have
seen. It not in long enough to remember any of it because I was a kid. But
okay,
yeah,
you have seen a movie that's up there with Get Carter and how many people hated it.
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I haven't seen.
We'd have to do a whole episode on you and this strange schizophrenic film history that you have. It makes no sense that you've seen the things you've seen and haven't seen what you've seen. But we digress. All right. So to get into it,
speaking of problems, there are not necessarily real solutions to.
Yeah, sure.
What's on the agenda today?
That's really a big question with you. But sure. So I have been. It really, because I'm American and heavily in that milieu, I would say. I still have a problem with this, but I think it's deeply true. And I think actually if we could come to accept some of this as a culture, I'm not saying we will, I don't think that's really human nature. I don't think it's in the American DNA. But I'm reminded of the idea that there are some problems that can't be solved. There are some things that just aren't going to work out. I'm thinking, and there are multiple different things in the arts that talk about this, but I'm thinking yet another thing that you haven't seen, the movie with Brad Pitt and Harrison Ford, The Devil's Own. Yeah, Taylor hasn't seen it. There's this scene, and I'm paraphrasing here. It's been years since I watched it, but it's something that I remembered from it. Is that Brad Pitt? The movie ends poorly for the characters, and Harrison Ford's an American, Brad Pitt is Irish, and Harrison Ford is saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he's like, this isn't an American story. It's an Irish story. It doesn't have a happy ending. And that is actually something that is, I think, deeply true about the world, about culture. Americans are young and we're optimistic, and that's a great thing. We're getting older as a society, and we're starting to, I think, learn the hard way. Not everything has a happy ending. We've talked a lot about the apparent decay in our culture, and I say, well, yeah, that's natural. That's the natural process of growing up. Not everything is all sunshine and roses all the way. It's not all improvement all the time. It's not everything's getting better all the time. There are real losses. There are real trade-offs. And some things you're not going to win. And that's actually not necessarily a bad thing.
Throw out some examples.
So I would say that, at least politically, I would like for us to go back to a more Jeffersonian, libertarian paradise that never existed, but was closer to being real at the founding than it is now. I think we would all be better off. I think we would not be involved in foreign wars, and I think we would just, trade with all, allies with none, that sort of thing. I don't think that's possible.
No.
I don't know. I actually don't think it's good for the world. I think it would be better for America, but I don't think it's good for the world. That's a losing proposition, and I don't think there's any going back. I wish we could, but I don't think that we will. And I in a way, I don't think that we should. It's not, we can't stay little children forever. Mm-hmm. And then on an individual level, regardless of how successful you are, tragedy is going to strike. You could be on the mountaintop one moment and just get hit by a bus and survive it, and now you're crippled and you can't do what you used to do. I mean, that happens to people all the time. That's the reality we live in, and you could just become bitter and resentful of that if something like that were to happen to you, but that wouldn't be to your benefit. What would be to your benefit is a certain level. I'm not saying to seek out and simply go limp and accept fatalism, but to accept the fact that sometimes things are not going to go your way, and that's okay. And if you can look at it that way and embrace the fact that tragedy is real, then and perhaps even necessary for your growth, you could grow up. And that not so those are my two examples, but on a macro political and then on a more micro individual level. And I would like to make sure I cite my sources here. One of my favorite authors, Martin Shaw, he discusses this in his book Liturgies of the Wild. So that it's not just me coming up with a sage wisdom, but I agree with it. I see it in my own life that I think there's a certain maturity that comes with, and maybe a softening of your ego that comes with being beat down by a fight you can't win.
Well, and also, I mean, in a way, the concept that no matter how hard you try, you can't generally bend the world to your will. I think we've been very blessed in the United States with things going our way for pretty much our entire history. We have sort of had our way with the world, so to speak, in good ways and in bad. We were able to, conquer north to south, east to west, a very, very large swath of land, certainly much larger than most other countries in the world occupy, with the exception of a few select countries, like namely China and Russia, and maintain a lot of cultural cohesion through that process, despite having a large amount of different cultures immigrate and then subsequently assimilate to that culture. And I don't think, there are certainly people that hate America that would disagree with what I'm about to say, but the culture of the United States is winning. It's something that we're very used to doing. Whatever we put our minds to, we're able to achieve. And in a lot of ways, I view our culture as that guy that you knew in high school that was really good at everything he touched. He was young, he was athletic, kind of in the prime of his life, and it seems like everything he picked up, he was just really good at. He was good in school, he was good at football, somebody convinced him to go wrestle, he was good at that, and then he decided that was boring, so he wanted to play baseball, and he was really good at that, and then that was boring, so he went to play soccer, and he was really good at that, and it seemed as if everything that he touched, he was good at. But eventually, I mean, everybody knows that guy. That guy grows up and maybe goes off to college and finds out, I'm not good at everything like I used to be. There are other people that are better at these things than I was. And I'm now in this weird place where I don't necessarily know if I'm good at anything. And in a lot of ways, I think that that's kind of where our culture is right now, where 100 years ago, 50 years ago, if you asked people if America was the best place in the world to live, that would be a unanimous yes. And now it's almost like, I don't want to call it 50-50. I don't think it's 50-50. I think that there are plenty of people that say they don't want to live in America that don't mean that.
70-30,
70-30.
80-20 probably is more accurate.
But I think that that's a good way to put it, that it's a sign of a maturing culture, that we are now entering this place where we don't have all of that youth and vigor. We've conquered all of the United States. It's all ours. We have this whole country now. There is no more expansionism occurring. We're not trying to conquer new land. That vigor has left us. And now we're left with what we've got. We don't necessarily have these super lofty, ambitious goals of, like we got all of the United States, then it was win World War II, then it was get to the moon, then it was, defeat the big red scare. And we got through all of those things. And I think our culture is in this weird period of like, now what?
Well, I think you could make the argument I'm going to forget the name, but basically the argument, the best thing for Rome was Carthage. Mm-hmm. You need a great enemy. You need something to fight against to keep yourself young. The other thing that America does, because it brings in people from the outside who want to be here, it has a way of staying young, because it's every person that comes here, as long as they assimilate, they basically shed their cultural history to a great extent, in proportion to the amount that they assimilate. And so you get new people who are almost cultureless other than the American culture.
Well, and they're also much closer to a culture that was, this is going to rub some feathers, less successful, maybe less prosperous, and they see the United States better than those of us that were born and raised here, I think, for exactly what it is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about immigrants that come to the United States and assimilate, is you'll never find somebody that loves America more than them. And it's because they have a direct comparison to what the world looks like in another place. And so they recognize that the United States has a lot of great things, despite the things that we may not necessarily be able to solve.
This wasn't originally where I was going to go with this, but that is an interesting segue. I'm not sure I've ever met a person who hates America who has left America.
No, I haven't.
I'm sure they exist, but most of the ones that I know have never left, and they don't know anything about the outside world.
Even if they could afford to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing. Most of them are well-to-do.
Because I know plenty of them that can afford to do so, that just choose not to. And that's neither here nor there, but I think kind of getting back to the root of what it was that we were intending to discuss here, it's tough. Part of the aging process, I think, even at the individual level, is getting to a place where you understand not everything has a solution. Like, we have a lot of issues that are in the, common speak at this point that are brought up regularly that aren't necessarily going to be solved. The one that I'll point to immediately is like poverty. Poverty is such a multifactorial issue that I don't think in a utopic world there would be no poverty, but utopia doesn't exist. I think it's a perfection that we could strive towards, but we'll never meet. I think limiting poverty is something that we've done a very, very good job at. We have made a culture and a society and an economy that makes it easy to not be impoverished provided you take certain specific steps. Like your chances of being in poverty with a high school education and being married are incredibly low. Not even a college education. And we're entering a period of society where college education is even becoming largely more meaningless. And companies are starting to look outside of college education to a credentialing system, which is a lean towards meritocracy. So it's incredibly easy to be successful in the United States compared to a lot of other places, but there is still going to be things that fall through the cracks, and it doesn't matter how many times we try to legislate around that. It seems like we find a new issue after new legislation's passed that we never thought of, or an unintended consequence from that legislation, like the fact that we can't afford to legislate poverty out.
I think here's a deeper, more intractable problem given human beings what they are. Another Taylor hasn't seen it. Enemy at the Gates.
Nope.
The movie didn't make. I mean, the movie was obviously making this point, but it was not like they invented it. But there's this scene where and I don't remember the characters' names exactly, but the two friends that they're both in the siege of Stalingrad, and they're talking about basically they're before the one friend goes and sacrifices himself to free up the main character to get out of, he was being pinned down by another sniper, and before he sacrifices himself, he says, there's a reason that the Soviet project will never work. Like, you could make people equal in the things that they have, but they'll find other things to be unequal in. And part of that was that they were both in love with the same woman, and she was only in love with the other. And so he realized, I will always be envious of you, even if we both are in this perfect Soviet society. And so you'll find ways to be impoverished. Poverty in some way relative to other. Somebody has more friends, somebody is more outgoing, somebody is more... There will always be inequity. There's no way to level it. And this is the problem of the utopians. They will destroy society trying to build a perfect one. And this is really depressing, but I go with Nietzsche here. You have to believe that Sisyphus was happy. And I don't know if do you understand not familiar. So Sisyphus, the story of Sisyphus in Greek mythology, he rolls the rock up the hill, it rolls down, he has to roll it up again. Mm-hmm. You always are rolling the rock up the hill. Once you get it there, it rolls back down. It's I believe that's I could be butchering it, but that's the basics of the myth. What Nietzsche is saying is, that's human life. You reach a goal, and then you've got to find another one, or else you wither and die. You will always be rolling a rock up a hill. You have to believe that you could be happy, always rolling that rock up the hill. There is no getting to the top of the mountain forever. Every mountain is a false summit. There's always another summit. And in a way, you better hope that that's the case. Because I think the worst thing for humanity, the worst thing for me anyway, is boredom. That's worse than death to me. Now, I could be wrong. Other people may say other things, and I've had a pretty easy life by comparison to human history. But boredom seems to me worse than death.
Well, and I would assume you're not talking about boredom as in the I don't know what to do today so much as boredom in the I don't know what to do with the rest of my life.
I don't know what I'm about. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean nothing. I'm just comfortable enough to subsist. I'm alive. I'm not going to die, but I have nothing to be about. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean by boredom, I guess. But that's the thing. The nature of humanity is actually tragic because we will never reach our goal.
Yeah.
And in a way, this is a weird thing about it. I think that's what Nietzsche is saying. You have to believe that Sisyphus is happy in that mm-hmm. you're going to be happy. Never getting the rock to the top of the mountain. And in fact, you actually wouldn't want to.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to say we're not saying that these aren't good things to strive for, right? Like it's good to want a society where people are on more equal footing. It's good to strive for a world where people have more equal opportunity, but what we're talking about there is equality, not equity. Equality is equal opportunity, equity is equal outcome.
And also an acceptance of the reality that you can only make things better. You can't make them perfect.
Correct. And it's tough because I have been in a multitude of positions on this philosophically, where when I was younger, I certainly, young and dumb, as they say, thought that these things maybe were more achievable than they certainly are. And I think that there are things that could be done to limit some of the suffering that happens in the United States and the West and the world at large. But the reality of this is like, by what means, right? Like how do you actually limit or exclusively remove human suffering from the equation when it's such a multifactorial issue? Like we all know somebody who is a perpetual victim. Like every situation they find themselves in, they're a victim. And it's like they're constantly shooting themselves in the foot, and it doesn't matter how much help they receive. They'll find a way to squander it and blame everything around them for its squandering. And how do you legislate around that? And there are a lot of people in poverty that will blame the system, but will never look at the way they spend their money or the way that they choose to spend their time or the education that they've chosen to pursue or not pursue as like a, this is why I'm here, and not a, this is why I'm here.
Well, here's yet another intractable problem. I think that you should try to make the situation you should try, if you could, to legislate around and make that situation better. But it is precisely that will destroy you. Like you can't, people who are always going to be the victim, you're not helping them by legislating and making their lives easier. You're only destroying them. So I would say you should try. It's a noble thing to try to make the life of the other better. But in so doing, for certain people, you're actually making it worse. Yeah. And there's no answer to that. And this is what I'm saying. There are some things that there just isn't an answer to. And accepting that as a reality is a signifier of maturity. And what's interesting is that, and I'm proud of America for doing this, we lean on the side of we can fix everything. Mm-hmm. And that's a good thing. But there's a certain level of maturity that comes with we're not going to fix everything.
And a lot of the things that we try to fix, we end up muddying up too. Like we can fix a lot of issues through, like with the poverty example, through, a social welfare system at the consequence of making more victims of that system.
I think that you have increased suffering through a welfare system. I do not think you've alleviated. I think you've alleviated a certain type of suffering, as in people are not in abject poverty. But I think they are suffering more in other ways. And that's the other thing. I'm not actually sure that I think it's good. This is, again, paradox. I think it's good to try to alleviate suffering. But I think that's the last thing humanity needs, is a world without suffering.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not a world worth living in, unfortunately. Like, it's all of our progress has been obtained at the heels of attempting to solve human suffering to some extent or another. Like a good and like really easy example of this is like our incredibly robust agriculture system. I go back to agriculture all the time because it's something I'm familiar with and something I grew up associated with. So I've got a lot of, I think, leeway to speak on it. We don't have to worry about crop failure at the individual level. We have so much abundance in terms of the crop and the livestock that we produce that's not That's not a failure that like the average American could even comprehend. We're in the middle right now of like a salmonella outbreak with eggs, and the Legionella outbreak with produce, and parasite or something or another. And the American public is outraged by this. And we are in a place where we're privileged enough to have something like that happen and be outraged about it, instead of going, oh, well, yeah, I guess that's just the cost of doing business. These things were so commonplace 100 years ago that it was just normal to have stuff like that happen.
Correct.
And we have such robust systems built around preventing these things that we as Americans now have the right to be outraged by it. And I'm outraged by it. It's an oversight. These things need to be fixed, and they are being fixed because we live in a society where that problem has largely been resolved. When you go to the grocery store, you don't expect that there's a chance the food that you're purchasing might make you sick. That is unique in the human experience. That is new. That is novel. That is not something that has been the case throughout the duration. It was something that would have been accepted as a cost of being alive 100 years ago. And that, in my opinion, that's a good thing. Like, that's a good effort to legislate around human suffering. And we've done a really, really good job with that. But I think people that think America is a bad place oftentimes overlook those things that we've done really well to focus on the things that we can't really do much at all with.
It's part of the success leads to the failure. It's because we've been so successful that these people think, why is there any suffering at all? We've gotten spoiled. They're outraged because we shouldn't have this problem at all.
Yeah.
Of course you should. In fact, I'm not sure that trying to fix all the problems would make us better, or even, I don't think, it would not make our civilization more survivable.
No.
I will try to draw some American pluck out of this at the end with some optimism. I think in this way you could say we're lucky. There is an infinite supply of problems to solve. And so we're going to continue to try to solve problems. We will find when we solve them, because we're Americans and in a way we're utopian. We think we can solve problems. And we seem to be able to, more so than most. Good on us. I don't think human beings are better off without suffering. Luckily, there is an inexhaustible reservoir of suffering to conquer. And so, as long as we're not miracled all into the afterlife where everything's, fat babies with harps or whatever, there will be an inexhaustible hill to climb, and luckily we're just the sort of creature that's all they want to do, climb the hill.
Well, and to kind of segue on the quote that you had earlier of like, you've got to assume that he was happy pushing that rock up the hill, I'll steal a quote from Jordan Peterson. What a privilege it is to have a problem worth solving. Like, it's a mindset thing, right? Like, I think that the most dangerous thing about a utopian society is it kills that mindset. It destroys it. It selects for a mindset that's completely oppositional to it. And my biggest problem with where technology's at right now is it is so easy to be comfortable and entertained in a situation that you wouldn't have been comfortable in 25 or 30 years ago. And instead of having the selection pressure associated with being in that position, pushing you out of that position, kind of like you said, suffering is a necessary component to progress. You have to have a reason to not want to do what you're doing, and typically that thing sucking is the reason that you want to not continue doing it. Well, it's respectfully really easy to be in poverty in the United States now, compared to poverty globally and compared to poverty historically. I'm not saying that like there aren't struggles that come with it. There are, and I don't want to be insensitive to those.
It's there's more psychological suffering. It's not literal starvation.
Yeah.
It's physical and psychological suffering.
Like, the amount of people that we have starving on street corners is very low. It exists, certainly. I'm not going to say that it doesn't.
But those people aren't starving because they can't get food. Those people are starving either because they're so strung out or they're mentally ill or both.
Yeah.
The food supply is plentiful enough that even the people, I've seen them, people walk in the streets are obese.
Yeah.
They're not healthy. I'm not saying they're healthy. And I'm not saying that's good. I'm not saying we shouldn't do something about
But
that.
you wouldn't have seen that 100 years ago.
Correct. Real poverty is people starving to death. And it happens now, just not in America.
Yeah, and that's I think more to my point in saying that like we've largely solved the issue of poverty, and because we've largely solved the issue of poverty, we shifted the goalpost on it. We've moved what poverty is in the collective psyche of America to a different issue entirely. And we now, I think, en masse view poverty as having less than other people. But the reality to the point of like not every problem can be solved is it doesn't matter what, like in Soviet Russia, there were still people that had more. They were just pulling the levers of power.
Correct.
Like in a utopia, there are still people with more. And even if you truly equalize the playing field, that movie that you exemplified where, you know, the guy that lives is the guy that the girl's in love with, and the guy that sacrifices himself loves the same woman, but she isn't in love with him. People will find ways to say other people have more, even if you equalize wealth distribution, food distribution. There are still going to be things that we view ourselves as being non-equivalent in. It's the grass is greener on the other side thing, right? Where like this guy is, you know, tall and chiseled and handsome and women love him. Why can't I be that way? Or this woman is, you know, petite and blonde and beautiful. Why can't I be that way? Like there are always going to be things that we segment it's a prison of our own creation.
Well, and then there's the Dostoevsky point in Notes from the Underground that let's say you could equalize everything, that everything was perfect, that all people had to do was basically worry about their next meal, what it was going to be. It was provided for them, and you know the furtherance of the species, procreation. That's all they had to worry about. People would go crazy just to destroy that out of sheer ingratitude. And that's the thing. Utopia means no such place. Mm-hmm. And let's pray that we never get there, because that would be the end of human happiness. Yeah. If we were to lose struggle, and I won't even say struggle necessarily or suffering. Let's say we were able to mitigate suffering such that it was only voluntary. I think maybe human beings could still be happy in a paradisal sort of thing, but we can't live without challenge. We need something to strive towards and something to get away from, a point A and a point B. And utopia means ridding ourselves of point A and point B. It's all point A. There's no movement whatsoever. That's hell. We would hate that. It would be the worst thing imaginable. Mm-hmm. So it's weird. I'm stuck saying we must continue to solve problems. But solving all the problems would be the worst thing that could happen to us. And I guess, again, I'll say, luckily, there's no shortage of problems, and there never will be.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost as if every problem that we've ever solved created unintended problems behind it that also need to be solved.
I would get even more mystical. It's almost as if the place is designed to provide the proper amount of suffering to make us happy.
Yeah.
It's a very weird thing. I'll leave it at that.
What do you guys think? Do you believe in a utopia? Do you think it's achievable? Or do you agree that problems are a good and necessary part of human society? Let us know.